Hi, my name is Lena. Welcome to my channel, and I'd like to talk about the first half of Laxdaela Saga. I read 39 chapters. It's about half of the book. And I forgot how difficult it was to talk about Icelandic sagas because they are so packed with information. There's just so much to talk about. You just cannot choose what to talk about. So, those are going to be my impressions, nothing more, just my impressions. First of all, sagas always remind me of Silmarillion because I read Silmarillion first. And by the way, Tolkien loved Norse sagas, and he read them in original. He could read Old Norse, I think, if I remember correctly. So, because sagas contain so much information about genealogical trees of the families and about who occupied which land, those sagas always remind me of Silmarillion. And I was glad to read about the characters we read in Eric the Red saga, or the Deep-Minded, the daughter of Ketil Flatnose. I was glad to read more about her. And once more, I saw that those sagas were interconnected because in this saga, Laxdaela, we meet Egil's daughter and we have Egil's saga. So I don't remember exactly who is going to read Egil's saga this month, but I envy this person. So basically, this saga is about descendants of Ketil Flatnose, but that's what we are dealing here with. And I'm sorry, guys. So those are just parts of genealogical trees. So basically, we are dealing with descendants of Ketil's daughter, Odd the Deep-Minded, and her brother, Bjorn the Eastman. And these sagas contain a great deal of individual stories, and they're all very, very interesting. I enjoy this saga very much. But let's talk about things that interested me. Those 39 chapters, they describe the time before Christianity has come to Iceland. So there are quite a bit of strong-willed, very interesting, probably very disagreeable women characters. Starting with the Maud herself. Odd herself, I'm sorry. So basically, Ketil Flatnose and his sons and his daughters leave Norway because they cannot live there while Harald Fairhaired rules there. They decide to leave Norway. Ketil's sons go to Iceland and settle there. But Ketil himself takes his daughter, Odd the Deep-Minded, and some of his relatives, the rest of his relatives, and goes to Scotland. He dies there, and due to circumstances, Odd becomes the head of the family. Her son gets killed. her father is dead. There is nothing about her husband. He probably was killed too. So she becomes the head of the family. Due to circumstances, because all the grown-up male relatives are killed. So she has a ship built and she sails to Iceland, back to her brothers with her grandchildren, her grandson Olaf, and her many granddaughters, whom she marries off while they are sailing to Iceland. And there are also quite a lot of followers who sails with her, high-born, noble and rich people who sailed from Norway with her father. So they are sailing with her back to Iceland now. So she was quite a character because high-born warriors followed her. And she was the one, calling the tune, giving orders, making decisions. So I was very glad to read about her more. But by the late in her life, I think she could have been called odd, the short-tempered, because she had quite a character. But I was glad that there was such a woman. Then another woman, Victus. She was a granddaughter of Olaf, Odd's grandson, and she was married to Tord Godi, who was a bit of a coward and a greedy person. So she was much more valiant than her husband was, and she had much stronger will than her husband. At some point, she gave refuge to her relative, one of her relatives, who was wanted for a manslaughter, and she gave him a refuge. But her husband was afraid of losing money and losing his positions. He was afraid of opposing the relatives of the killed man. And he basically sold to the brother of the deceased, this person, his wife's relative. But she not only saved her relative, but also ran this man who were after her relative from her husband's land, and even broke this their leader nose. So she was quite a character. Then she divorced her husband, and she didn't. Her husband was a very rich man, but she didn't took anything with her but her jewels and things that belonged to her dowry probably. So it was customary to divide the goods, the possessions, but she didn't take anything with her. Then there was Sorgert. I'm sorry, Gert. Angel's daughter. She was a very interesting character too. First of all, she refused to marry Olaf, the peacock, who was a descendant of Odd the Deep-Minded, who was a son of a very prominent man in Iceland. And he also turned out to be a grandson of an Irish king. But she refused to marry him. Olaf went to her and talked to her. They were talking for the whole day. And I guess she liked him, or maybe even fell in love with him. And after their talk, she agreed to marry him. And it reminded me about Harald Hardrada, the Norwegian king we read last year about, and his Russian wife, Elisif. She was the daughter of Yaroslav the Great, a Russian knight. It's probably equals to a prince. So she decided to marry Harald after talking with him, but she went against her father's wishes in it. And I read a very good book. It was a buddy read with Elizabeth from Bookish North. The book was by Vera Henriksen, and it was about Hardrada, but it was told from the point of view of his wife, Elisif. Unfortunately, there are no English language translations. I read it in Russian, and Elizabeth, of course, read it in Norwegian. So it was a very compelling story, and I loved it very much. It's one of my favorite books of 2019. I don't remember how much time we were supposed to take reading this, but I couldn't stop. I read it in 3 days, probably. It was a very compelling story, and Harald and Elisif, they were very compelling characters. So this saga reminded me of Harald Hardrada and Elisif's story in some way. Actually, Sorgert was, I think she was not only strong-willed, she was very opinionated lady, and she liked things to be done her way. She not always she interfere with her husband's dealings, but sometimes she would dug her heels. And once she married off her daughter through it against Olaf's wishes, but it didn't end well. That was a very strange, interesting, but very strange story, and it contradicted the family tree I have in the book, because according to the family tree, Thurid was Olaf's sister, Olaf's half-sister, not his daughter. Anyway, it was a very interesting story too. And finally, Gudrun, who is a descendant of Bjorn the Eastman, the brother of Odd the Deep-Minded, the son of Ketil Flatnose. While being married, she fell in love with a man called Thord, who was married himself to a woman called Odd. They divorced their spouses and they got married. But this first wife of Thord, Odd, she waited for a perfect opportunity. Then she surprised her husband and ran him through with his own sword. Well, she wasn't a nice person, but you cannot deny that she was quite a character. She had guts, and she was definitely a strong woman. She wasn't a good swordsman though. She struck her husband from the side. He lived, but his right hand didn't serve him as well as it used to do. but he lived. So that was quite a story. What I was also surprised how lavish, how generous kings were with their gifts. Not only they gave to this Icelandic man, to this highborn Norwegian kings, to highborn Icelandic man. They gave them swords covered in gold, and spears, gold spears, and golden rings, golden bracelets, rich clothes, rich clothes. I could understand that, but they also gave them ships as presents, as gifts. That was very interesting and kind of difficult to believe. The thing that fascinates me the most and baffles me, the custom I do not understand, is fostering children. For example, Bolli, son of Thorlake, was fostered at Olaf's, the peacock house, in his uncle's house. I can see advantages of that. Life was difficult. Healthcare was, I think, non-existent. So in the time of epidemic, it might be comforting to a father to know that he has a son or two sons growing up somewhere in a different part of Iceland, relatively safe. He probably wanted to know that his land will come to his heir, that his family name and his blood name will continue. I can understand that. Then this fostering probably made those children to grow up faster, to be more independent, to be more stronger. I don't know how in your part of the world, I don't know about your part of the world, but here we have some mothers that can smother their sons with their love and care. So probably that was an advantage, that they grew up fast and they grew up strong warriors. Also, as I understand it, in the time of need, probably in the armed conflict, such a child would have, such a man would have not only his family, his own family supporting him, but also his foster family and their freedmen, their bonds supporting him in arms. And as far as I understand, those children, they were no hostages. They weren't hostages. They were loved, and it always a more respected, stronger, richer person gave his sons to foster families. But I still cannot understand it, because if you foster a child of 3 years old, of 1 year old, such children, they can't possibly love their own father, their own brothers, the way they would growing up in the family. Of course, they had friends. They loved their foster parents' children, their foster parents. But I cannot understand it, especially when a woman, she lost the husband she loved, and all she had left of him was this 1-year-old child and a person to comfort her offered to foster the child, and she was glad. I cannot understand that. Nevertheless, I'm enjoying this saga very much, and I think Laxdaela Saga is as good place to start with Icelandic sagas as any other saga. It's very interesting. It's difficult when you read about family trees. It can be difficult, but it's also very rewarding, very interesting, and fascinating. Thank you for watching. I will leave all the links to my co-hosts in the info box, and in case they are giving me too much credit, all my input in this thing was that I said to my bookish friends, let's read sagas, and anything from this moment on, I consider teamwork. So I will leave links to their channels into info box, and thank you for watching. Goodbye and happy reading.